Welcome everybody to IntelliVen Learning Community number 6, introducing the power of clarity. Please enter in the chat where you're located and what is most important for your organization to do differently next. And as you know, notice just heard, today's session is being recorded. Participants may appear in a future replay of the program. Today's agenda, we'll remind ourselves of what the purpose of the IntelliVen Learning Community is, and then look at what is Manage to Lead, MTL, and what's new about MTL. We also will then turn it over to our featured speaker to share some of what he's been doing with what he's learned in the Manage to Lead Immersion program and with the tools and methods that come with Manage to Lead. Then we'll throw it open for open discussion and wrap with the reflections, comments, and questions. So remember, the purpose of the learning community is to reinforce and improve the application of what you learn and what you have to work with in the Manage to Lead system. You also have an opportunity to network with others who share a common foundation in their experience, use, and interest in the Manage to Lead system, tools, methods, and principles. It's also a forum in which you can practice briefing whatever it is you're working on and applying the tools. And it's also a place to practice listening to others who are experimenting with applying the tools and for getting and giving feedback in both of those situations. And it's also an opportunity to learn when we cover new content in the learning community forums. So we've answered the question of what is Manage to Lead more succinctly than ever before. I want to share that with you here. Manage to Lead is an online system of integrated tools, methods, principles that we use to architect, build, run, and change any organization. So there's a suite of tools and templates that hang together so that there's not just one and then another, it's a whole suite of them that work together in a way of using them, which we call the methods, and the logic behind them that makes them work, that collectively become the system. And its beauty is in its ability to help a team architect, build, run, and change any organization. It was built by a team of folks who have been very successful in running, building, architecting, and changing organizations. About a dozen of us over the past 10 or 15 years have been putting this together based on our experience, lessons learned. We've also vetted what we've come up with leading business schools and organization development programs, and factored in feedback and input from them to hone them to become world-class best practice in executive team development. And the track record speaks for itself. We've an impeccable and impressive record of success in applying the tools ourselves and with those who we help. People who have experience with the program and the tools and the system tell us it's a game-changing experience. That experience produces amazing results as the competence builds gradually over the course of the program, over the course of continually using and applying and learning from the system. We have several ways of accessing and applying the program and in the system and the tools through a hands-on immersion academy, which is a cohort model of learning, where leadership teams use the system on their case in a series of modules. We also follow that up with ongoing executive reviews to provide guidance and support to the application of the tools to a business. We also have certified MTL trained consultants who provide side-by-side support to those who have in-flight initiatives that want to make them go faster or perform better. The system and the tools are characterized by the fact that they're all online. The program can be delivered in room, but these days it works 100% well online. And it is not a program for individual leaders, it's a program for leaders and their teams. So the whole team learns together and works in the system, the tools, the methods together on their collective whole business. So everybody's working together to try to work and do the best they can for the whole. And leaders from any organization around the world, in any industry, any stage of venture maturity, any business model, all are welcome, and the tools work remarkably well in all business situations. And as I mentioned before, the content now has achieved what we consider world-class status. It is proprietary to IntelliVen and accessible through various arrangements with IntelliVen. So there's 3 ways to access and apply the tools, methods, and principles. And the first is they're all free. The tools are all free. You can access them on the IntelliVen website. There are 60 tools at this point, with more coming every day. The tools recently have been upgraded so that they become more modern and also more templative. And they're also better cross-referenced to other and related content on the IntelliVen site. Posts, insights, videos, and so on are more cross-referenced so that each tool is connected to content that tells you how to use it and gives examples and instructions. We've also now made it possible for an organization to license access to all the tools as if they were their own. And we have now made that available, and it is becoming, we've actually had that happen where someone has licensed the tools and branded them for themselves. They have rights to do that through this arrangement. If you're interested in that, let us know. And also the tools are, as I said, totally free, and they're going to stay free, but we have been advised, and we'll follow up on this, to gate the tools so that in order to access all the tools, we'll require you to provide some information. Most of you already have provided that information. If you find that you're being asked for it again, just provide it to us once, and you should never need to give it to us again, even if we already have it. Second way to access and apply the tools is through participation in the Mtl Immersion Academy. This is our cohort-based model. We have 8 cohorts of mixed organizations. So leaders and teams from different organizations convening together in a cohort model to go through the program and learn how to access, apply the tools on their case. And we'll still do those, but we're doing them more on demand. If people want them, we'll put them together. What we're more focused on now is selling and licensing the internal instance to allow organizations to take the program in the academy internal, to offer a cohort experience of their own to up and coming leaders. And if they're interested, also to their clients. And they can do this as often as they like, and they can do it on their own. We'll train them to do it on their own, or we can continue to help. And we have an example of that with Through. We also continue to have what we call the Mtl Accelerator, where we provide in-sourced help using the Mtl system to architect, build, run, and change organizations. And we have many examples of where Mtl trained consultants have gone in and worked in roles, usually in-sourced COO or in-sourced CMO or CTO or marketing leads, sales leads, who are trained in the program and the content, who can work with the team side by side to help apply what they've learned. People find this a high intensity application of the system, and it's perfectly tailored to whatever the situation is that you're working with. We also have major upgrades that have been made to the learning management system. The content that exists in the learning management system container can be in any learning management system. The one we're working with now comes from a major university, and we continue to improve it. And if we were to go to port to any other university or internal learning management system, that would not be a problem to do that. But if you are interested in working with us in the Immersion program, we do use the one from the University of Massachusetts. We have tighten the content through editing and smooth the organization of the content. So it's easier to navigate, easier to get at, more logical and intuitive. We've also improved the layouts using learning management system functionality called tabs. For example, here you see the resources that are available to you in the program brought to you by the system. So you have the text, the toolbox, breakout groups, principal consultants. This used to be just a long linear list, and now it's a little bit easier on the eyes and easier to navigate. And this sort of thing we've been doing throughout, using what's called accordions, so buttons to open up text and displays, standouts to make it easier to focus attention where you want it, polls instead of just surveys, and prompts that are more accommodating to providing input. So we now use prompts in the earlier modules to collect important information that feeds what you do in a later module. And that is becoming more and more useful. So what's happening is the learning management system itself is not just for learning, you actually use it. So the teams have constant access to it and can use it as a facilitator in whatever it is they're doing to architect, build, run, and change their organization. If you're interested, you can give a little sample of this. I put a link here, and maybe Denise, you could throw it in the chat if people want to pick it up. In the PDF version, which we'll send out of these slides, it'll be hot. You can click this and you'll get sent to a page on which gives you access to the resource section of the learning system, and you can flip through that and get a feeling for what it's like. As we use and work with the system, the tools, and the people that are benefiting from those, we learn what it is that needs to be done a little bit differently to improve the uptake and the gain. And so where we haven't already with the tools and the text been as clear or as precise and complete as we should be, and when we've learned new things, we need a way to systematically make that available to you all. So part of that is with the new tools and the new posts and new insights. But from time to time, our strategy is to also repackage and upgrade our content and push it out in the form of an ebook. So we've just released the Power of Clarity ebook, which focuses on the WWW, the what, who, why tool. We just released it last week. It builds on and amplifies and further clarifies how to use the WWW. So it takes the WWW section of the Manage to Lead textbook and pulls it out, updates it, adds to it, makes it a little bit clearer, and it's now available in its own. And you can get it. You can get it by clicking the Power of Clarity link here, and that can also be put in the chat. And you can download your own copy. For an example, just to give you a little bit of an example, the all-important what of the what, who, why. The what we found that we hadn't said as clearly as we wanted to, that needs to be reminded, is that's new, that's in this book. As an example, we do this for each of the W's, but this particular one just give you an example. We find that people are having trouble describing what they do. They've been so trained to sell the value of what they do and the solution in its entirety, as opposed to, well, what do you actually do? What do you deliver? What do you provide? So in this case, we want to know more about, well, we lay bricks versus we deliver a castle. So it's the what describes that which you actually do or deliver, not the result of what you do, but what are you actually doing and providing? And so that's an important insight. It also needs to be rooted in what your organization has actually done. A lot of times people want to focus on the aspirational. Here's what we want people to think we do because we will do it when they ask for it. That's not really where you need to be. You need to start with what you actually do, not what you aspire to do. And then further, the what needs to be synced and tailored to work with the who and the why. Example in the book will make that clear, that depending on let's say the scale of the organization, it's a potential buyer, you want to position your what in a different way. So take a look and you'll see how that works. So we will be promoting this in the next few weeks. And if you would keep an eye out for it, you can access the link, if you don't use the one that we provided in the chat or in this PDF, you'll pick it up in some of these promotions. Download it and please share it with others and encourage them to do the same. Let us know your reaction to it. How does it work? What did you do with it? Did it impact your approach, so that we can learn from your experience with this new content? We mentioned that last week we were honored to be a participant in the Manager World Summit hosted by Jose Luis Romero in Mexico. And it was quite a nice event. We were delighted to learn that our topic had 10 times the average views of all the sessions, 39 sessions. We were pretty high end, if not maybe the most popular. That said, the other topics were surprisingly good. I watched several of them and was very impressed enough to go ahead and buy the access pass to be able to see all of them. The way this conference worked was interesting. You got a ticket for free to come to the sessions, that all of which were available to you on a single day. So there's 5 days. The 39 sessions were spread over the 5 days, and on any given day you could watch the set of sessions that were available that day, unless you bought a VIP pass for less than $100. You get access to all 39 sessions for a year. And I watched enough of them to know that it's crazy. You can't watch all 39 sessions on the day in which they're broadcast. So you really want to buy the pass. And if you'd like to check it out, you can see our session just at this link here. If that's all you want to do is see that. If you want to see the whole thing, and I encourage you to do this, just use this link. It's only good until the end of this week, however. So between now and midnight Friday, basically West Coast time, you can use this link to get yourself a VIP pass for the current price. What he's going to do is repackage this and use this in an evergreen format. And I don't know what the terms will be, but I don't think it'll be any better than this if you're interested. Just remember when I was 35 years old and trying to, figure out how to do my job as well as it could possibly be done, I craved this sort of content, and I'm really impressed to see this compilation right here made available to anybody. We also are introducing the Executive Team Development Program that Dr. Green has led the charge on, and he and I have worked together on half a dozen organizations to offer this program that is based on what we cover in the topic 9, Grow, where we talk about the venture being in a stage of maturity and the top team being a mix of skills that is ideally configured to match what norms for success have proven to be by stage of venture maturity. So we can assess the top team skill set for its fit with success norms by stage of venture maturity, and then help the team custom development plans for team development and individual member development and composition development through analysis of the data that we collect in the program, and then work with the CEO and the team to take actions that make sense in light of that. Invariably, every time we do this, it leads to incredible team awareness, self-awareness, and individual self-awareness in the context of the team. It improves communication because we come up with skills and methods for people to give each other feedback and insights in a way that is easily received, that they hadn't known how to do before. It increases alignment, clarity about what it is the team is expecting from you, and invariably leads to breakthrough performance. Brent, I don't know, do you want to say any more about that?
Yeah, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's really a key learning template for the team as a whole, as well as for each individual who can develop their own learning plans based on the feedback that they get. So that's the only thing I wanted to add.
Right. Okay, well, that is the last of the What's New content. I don't know if anybody has any questions on that. If not, we'll progress to the portion of the session today where we'll have a featured speaker talk about their experience with what they're doing with the program. So we go on to that. Denise, you want to take it away? You're on.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. What we'd like to do is I'm going to just have a conversation with Rodney. Rodney was part of our cohort 8, and he's the founder and CEO of Thinksocially. And I'll let him talk a little bit more about what Thinksocially is. But to just give you some background, it's a technology consulting firm, and they specialize in total solutions for IT management professional services, with a growing focus on compliance-based cybersecurity measures, primarily for organizations that support the federal government. So Rodney, why don't you elaborate further? Tell us a little bit more about who you are and how you came to found Thinksocially.
Okay, everybody should be able to hear me. As Denise mentioned, my name is Rodney Turner. I'm the CEO and founder of Thinksocially Technical Services. We are a managed service provider, IT managed service provider, providing IT support services to organizations, primarily in the DC metropolitan area. And we package our services to include the normal ongoing computer, network, and cloud systems support, but we do it under a compliance-based cybersecurity framework that mitigates risk for our clients. Before we shifted to become a cybersecurity-based organization, we previously was primarily a service desk that provided end user support to organizations and their end users. And just like the cloud changed the IT services market, about 15 years ago when everything kind of moved to the cloud, compliance-based IT management, things like GDPR in Europe, if you've heard of that, and the imminent compliance regulations that will be implemented in the USA have shifted basically the customer needs in the market, so that traditional service desk providers now need to provide that service desk under the regimen of compliance, which is complex. What led me to, before I started Thinksocially, my career path took me through a number of, several management consulting companies. And I would say upper echelon management consulting companies, like Touchstone, which was mentioned earlier, and Wes Schaefer was a part of that. And that's how I became aware of Peter D, because my view was that Peter D was a thought leader, in these upper echelon management consulting circles. And so, they were providing management consulting services to their clients, and then turning to folks like Peter D for thought leadership on how they can improve their service. And so my career path took me through those kind of companies. Essentially, IT for any organization happens inside of a larger organization. And so that means your IT function in your organization is going to be shaped by the larger organization. And so because my career path took me through management consulting companies, I felt like not only am I, as my organization, geared toward providing services to that market sector, but I also felt like I understood a little bit about management consulting and the practice of management consulting. And I will say that, as I took Mtl, I was surprised to learn that there was a lot that I thought I knew that I didn't know, being re-exposed to some of the principles that my career path led me to here.
So that's an interesting point. I mean, obviously you're a student of best practices in leadership and management. And so before Mtl, what was your focus as a leader? How did you view your role?
Before Mtl, primarily my role was, where my organization started small. And so my focus was primarily identifying the jobs to be done, the different jobs to be done in the organization, which is vast. Any given organization is going to have finance and HR and IT and a number of other functions. Essentially, my focus was abdicating certain responsibilities, like maybe finance and HR, to key individuals who could kind of run that category of tasks, and then focusing my time on identifying the jobs to be done within a particular lane of my organization, client delivery or finance, identifying the jobs to be done in those lanes. And then not only doing the job, but also trying to document how that job is to be done. And the goal was to systematize the business so that instead of creating a job for myself, which is what I had I was, a job for myself and a job for others, which is what I had. I was attempting to create a system of jobs that functioned without me. So that's what I was doing beforehand.
So if we go back to our MTL language, in a lot of ways, you were defining the what for your organization, and in documenting and ensuring quality control, and then also allowing the organization to scale beyond an individual to multiple people consistently delivering services. So when you just did MTL recently, and that was several years into your business. So I'm curious how your perspective shifted in terms of your role as a leader based on your experience with MTL.
Well, MTL helped me understand that, the role of a leader in the organization is, much more vast, if that's the proper way to phrase things, than what I was focusing on before MTL. Okay. Understanding the do, sell, grow mentality, understanding the depth of your finances, as well as a lot of the other exercises that we went through in the program, helped me to understand that there were areas and stages and segments of the business that I really wasn't focusing on. The MTL exercises, helped me grapple with, what I can best describe as a rabbit hole of understanding where is our group heading? What are we trying to, what are we doing to get to our desired state? What do I, as the owner, want? And what does the group, separately want as a team? And so, I would say that the first exercise, which is the WWW, as well as the other one, but the WWW really stands out as one of the most difficult activities I've engaged in years. And on the surface, when I think about WWW, it doesn't seem very hard. But once you start to grapple and go through the exercise and get clear on what your end state is or where you want to go, it's extremely complicated. And I would say that it makes it more complicated because I do think that grappling with where you're going goes beyond at some level. And, Peter D can correct me if I'm wrong. It goes beyond the rational mind. Okay. You're dealing, when I engage with dealing with strategy and determining where I'm going and trying to document that, we had to deal with a lot of murky things as a group. Fear came up big time, anxiety, other human emotions and responses that are not rational. And then not to remember that everybody has different cognitive abilities. And so there's different levels of being able to grasp this level of thinking. So on the surface, it seems simple, but once you start to try to define and apply these lessons, it's difficult. And so that's why I call it a rabbit hole, because I haven't found the bottom. And so it goes pretty deep. And I'll say that it made me remember, early in my career, when I started Thinksocially, some of our first clients were, I'm lacking the better words, organizations that served senior citizens, various types of organizations that serve senior citizens. And so one owner, we tried to deliver IT support to a senior citizen home, and we struggled. And so the owner sat me down and she explained to me, Rodney, you're very logical. Computers are logical, but in this environment with the people that you're supporting, they're not logical. Logic is a tool, but you cannot use logic and apply them to our customers. Okay, you have to realize that folks are emotional, that folks are people, and that they necessarily don't operate in a logical fashion. And so with that example, I draw parallels to the IntelliVen program because going through the exercises revealed kind of things that go beyond the rational mind that I had to remember, kind of the lessons of supporting the senior citizens home that I was in, and draw from that to help me with the exercises in the IntelliVen program.
Interesting. So are there...
Denise, one thing, Brent's got his hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, thanks, Rodney. Just incredible information. I'm just wondering, how much time did that WWW take your team to go through, and did you get any pushback around the time it was taking?
Yes, I got pushback, and there's a lot of my team members who didn't participate. And so what ended up happening is I had to participate and then bring those lessons back to our team meetings, because our huddles, we have a twice a week huddle meeting where the whole team participates. And so that is related to tactical operations, and other tasks amongst the team. And so I started to splice into these huddle meetings, lessons that I was learning from NTL. And so that's why I was able to get it to the wider team. And yes, when I asked the team to participate, they cited the time and they said, hey, I have a job to do and I kind of need to go home at the end of the day. And that was tough for me to swallow, but that was the reality.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Brent. Any other questions from anybody else? I wanted to ask Rodney, you know, if there are specific tools or templates or approaches that you come back to time and again. You know, now that we're in the post-MTL environment, you know, we're actually doing the do and review. Are there certain things that you keep coming back to as a touchstone?
I haven't gotten to the do and review yet. We're still in the do, but I would say that the do, sell, grow changed my view of the business. Again, I'm the CEO and founder of the business. I thought that I had a pretty good conceptual understanding of where my business was going, who I was serving, and what I needed to do next. And yeah, going through the do, sell, grow exercise did change my perspective of how my organization is structured and that changed how I viewed you know, what our next steps were. And also the change framework was compelling, okay? Helping to take the do, sell, grow and the structure, the new way that I was seeing the business, and then apply that to action, which the change framework really allows you to take your conceptual vision that you developed in your WWW and your do, sell, grow, and then apply it through the modeling of the change framework.
Okay, great. One of the things that you and I have talked about is that shifting from working in the business to on the business. I was wondering if you can reflect on that, because certainly you're an expert and a thought leader in your, you know, in the area of compliance-based cybersecurity. So, you know, how do you manage that kind of push-pull, that conflict between doing the stuff that's cool and interesting and then reverting back to looking at your business overall?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, how do you go from working in the business to working on the business? It's easier said than done. And it's extremely difficult because there's only so many hours in the day. And if you're an organization, I mean, if you don't have a lot of startup capital, okay, and you're bootstrapping yourself, then you're not going to have, you're going to have time deficiencies essentially, because there's not going to be enough hours in the day for you to run the business and do everything that you need to do. And so it's a challenge to find the time to work on your business versus working in your business. And the way that I've done it is, you know, the MTL artifacts, you know, for lack of better words, the charts and diagrams and worksheets and templates that are provided for free through the program. Those are really helpful because it helps you just know, you know, you can see an artifact, understand what you're thinking about, and then kind of dive right into it instead of trying to figure out how you're going to do that. And so essentially you just got to make the time, and it's going to hurt, but you're going to have to take, you know, time per week where you focus strategically, and you're going to find that it's difficult. It's difficult to shift from working in the business to focusing strategically and working on the business. I would say sometimes it takes me 30 minutes to really get my mind in the right framework just to start thinking about this stuff. And then the artifacts really help because depending on what I'm thinking about, there's an artifact that I can grab to help shape my thinking. And that saves a lot of time. That allows that 2 hours a week that I spend to actually be effective versus not having any guidance.
That's good. Well put.
Great. Does anybody else have other questions for Rodney before I take him off the hot seat? Okay.
I don't have a question. I don't have a question, but I will say, I think it was very insightful for you to go ahead, take the course, and then use the system of bringing back mini lessons to the huddles. Because what you're basically doing is adapting to what they're thinking is possible. You're abstracting, it seems to me, what the key learnings are, and you're able to move the whole team together. They don't have the benefit of the whole thing. I'm curious, I guess I do have a question about what were people's response when you did this? Did they kind of want to know more? Did any of them watch any of the videos, or was just you telling them about it and then applying it sufficient?
So I think the impact on the team, it definitely helped the team get clear. So as I brought back lessons from MTL, there was a lot of interest. You could just see that the team was captivated, and especially in the days of Zoom, everybody's right there, and you're not on the phone necessarily. Some people are remote and some people's on site. With Zoom, you can pretty much see everybody. And I was able to see the expressions of the team, working with them, in some cases, a decade. In some cases, with new hires, I could see that they were captivated by what I was bringing. And I could also see that, and that was nonverbal really, but I could see captivation, and I could see that it really brought more meaning into the business, where now everybody had a job to do, and now that job to them appeared to be more meaningful to them because they understood the end goal. They understood why that job was important and how that job supported the to-be state that we were working toward.
That's great. There's a whole movement around the importance of purpose. And this, I think you really described very clearly how using the WW can contribute to that.
Yes.
So, Rodney, I want to consolidate at one point that you made that I thought was spot on, which is everybody knows that they're supposed to work on the business, but very few people know how to do that. And the first task is to figure that out. So what you're saying is it becomes possible to work on your business because we've sort of figured a lot of things out and made it accessible to you so that you now can go ahead and do it. So that's what we like to say is we make it easy to work on your business. I mean, maybe it goes stop short of being fun, but for some of us it is, because it now becomes doable. And that's really what all this is about, is making it doable, possible to work on your business and not just in it. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And Rodney, one of the things that you've shared is that, that they're kind of in the back of your head, you're thinking about a way to actually kind of run more people in your team through MTL with you again, so that you can, bring them in a hands-on way.
Yeah,
correct.
That's a good idea. We find when the leader and the team take it together, they help each other, retain it. So you don't have to remember everything to go back. They all sort of work together and it becomes a collective leadership, and which is really the modern model of leadership. Is it's really not one person's job. It's a group, it's a team. And here's how they can do it.
Agreed. I felt like, so I did take it alone the first time. And yes, taking it with the team is definitely, valuable. There's no question about it. I liked the idea of getting a head start on the concepts before I have to lead the team in those concepts.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And, taking the program was drinking from a fire hose. And, I had to, I would say that, using the time of the program, dedicating myself to the exercises helped retain a lot of that information. But I think that for me, I intend to retake the program with the team to gain new insights. And so, my intention is to take the program every year or so, maybe every 15 months with the team, and continue to evolve our clarity, our shared clarity.
You're not the first person to do that. And it's really turned into a best practice, is to think of it not as a one and done, but as a repeatable process that you do, your team does, the next team does, any organizational group or project or initiative even. The more times you go through it, the more you get out of it. And it becomes a tool to use to do whatever it is you're trying to do, not just something you learn and go and do forever. So that you're spot on. That's a good model. Dennis, I noticed you're nodding your head. Did something that you just hear resonate?
Absolutely. So I'm right now working with a very early stage startup, and I took the IntelliVen Mtl alone, and I'm just using all of that to try and spark people to move in certain directions and to get clarity, particularly where we are in our stage. We got a lot of people and everybody has an idea and they all want to go off and do stuff. And we're finding that a lot of stuff doesn't really generate a lot of movement. And so it's been really helpful for me to even just to be able to assess what's going on and what's going wrong. before I can figure out how to help them move into what can be done in a more effective way.
Interesting.
It is interesting. And so is there an opportunity to actually bring the leadership into the fold, or, you know, where they could experience it together, rather than being kind of seated from your insight?
Yeah, I think there will be. Right now, we're in early stage funding. We're you know, right past angel, and we really have to focus on the technology. But even that was something that I could make a very strong case with, where I don't really care if you have a 5-year strategy, because if we don't have a product, we don't need a strategy. So it was really helping drive to absolute what's critical right now in order to get to the next stage, and really just kind of map out what are the next 3 steps. So it's a slow process, but at least I have a fairly good target and a vision for how I want to help them get there.
Interesting. Okay. So this might be a good point to shift over to some of the questions or topics that have been submitted by the group. Peter, do you want to take us there?
Sure.
Yep.
You were gonna, I didn't switch the order. Do you want to go in this order, or?
No, that's fine. I thought actually, since Rodney has been talking about leadership style, that that might be a nice way to segue into the 3rd bullet, which is about leadership communication. So somebody asked if this group has examples of a leader being so clear about a desired future state that the people who hear the message are compelled to speak up about, you know, kind of taking the next step, what they could do in their roles and being committed to it. So that translation from messaging to, you know, adoption and action. So I'm wondering if this spurs, if anybody has examples or shares the same struggle that they can talk about.
I'll share that in the 3rd bullet point that you mentioned. My comment doesn't relate exactly to the question, but the bullet point said something about, are there examples of a leader being so clear that X? So my mind sees that. And that's compelling to me because my mind struggles to grasp, is there, does Peter D have examples of a leader being so clear that what kind of problems do they have, at that stage? I imagine that, just off the top of my head, I imagine that it's going to take me a decade, okay, of IntelliVen programs to get to the level of clarity where I feel like I've hit the bottom of the rabbit hole. And so I wonder, is there anybody who is so clear, who's reached that pinnacle, and what kind of problems emerge for them at that point?
So you didn't ask the question, but you have the question.
I did not ask it, correct.
But you have the question. I'm happy to weigh in, but let's throw it open to others first. Jim, do you see anything like that?
I'm been racking my brain to think of a good example, Peter.
Yeah, I think if you remember in the program we talk about when we're doing the change framework and looking at getting where we want to go. There's things the leader wants people to get there, and what the question is saying is, how do you get people to get their own ideas about how to get there? How do they internalize it? I remember being at the operating group level meeting of a company that became $1 billion company, and the CEO had these ideas that we should be doing some things differently. And I remember, we would hear the ideas and now go back to our business units and run things the old way. And then, one day I was at the table and he had a good idea, and I said, "Whoa, that is a good idea." I think I get that one. I think I'm going to do some things differently in order to capitalize on that idea. And then that drove a whole series of actions that ended up being phenomenally successful. So I kind of, Rodney, experienced exactly what you're wishing would happen and what the question is asking to happen. And that's when we developed the model that's in the program that we in the system, we talk about, you know, we use, some people say, do this, and people say done, right? That you say the boss says do this, okay, I'm going to do it, but then you don't really do it. What you really want is to go to what we say, what, why, want, act. What is it we're trying to do here? Why? Oh, that's a really good reason. I want that to happen. Now I'm going to do something. So the idea is it has to become so compelling that you get people to the point where they understand it and they viscerally internalize it to the point of desire. And now it's in their best interest, in the interest of the whole, which is in their interest, to come up with ideas that they can then do. I think that's what the question is asking for. Does that ever happen? I'd say the answer is yes. But does it happen by accident? Well, it did in that case I just explained, but I think that it doesn't have to always be by accident. You can make it happen if that's what you're trying to do. I don't know, does anybody want to react to that?
So I was thinking about that. The leader is stated, oftentimes the leader will cite a vision from their point of view without necessarily communicating the what's in it for me, for the rest of the organization, or for the other individuals who are at the table.
Right.
And somehow, you know, taking the message and saying, you know, from my vantage, here's where I am, and here's my why. And the why turns into a what's in it for you,
right,
for everybody else who's at that table. So sometimes leaders are great at the visioning, but they're really not great at that next stage of operationalizing or anticipating what other people, you know, how others will connect with their ideas. And, you know, one of the things that I found was really effective was when a leader brought in one or two people to float an idea ahead of time, so they could actually see the reactions, hear the objections, and then that helped them to internalize that information into their own content, allowed them to get into the other person's shoes. So if it's not obvious, like, how do I get that information into my head?
That's a good point. I mean, it's not, again, it's not just one and done, it's a process. And what you're describing is a series of consciously conceived steps that make what the question is asking, if it ever happens. It only happens when you make it happen. I mean, it can happen by accident, but why wait for that? You need to do a conscious series of steps. So let me see if I can find someone who gets this, bring them in. By just having them prepared to share it with others, it'll reinforce their thinking, and it'll give everybody an idea, and then they'll want to maybe to do as well as this person, and they'll see how the whole thing gets better, and they participate in the success and in the glory of that. So yeah, it's a conscious, it's a method, it's a process, not just a thing. So
I would add, sorry, this is Adam, Peter. I would just add that so much of this has to do with how it's communicated. You know, it really does. You can have the clearest idea of a WWW, for example, of any leader in the history of leadership. And if you communicate it in a way that generates resistance, makes people feel threatened, that their domain is somehow affected by this thing they had no say in, then you'll automatically be generating that resistance and not get people to go along. I really like the way that Rodney was describing how he would take snippets of what he was developing and the clarity he was achieving and taking it to his stand-up meetings that he had with his team and sharing those little bits and pieces. Gives people ownership of part of it because they feel like they've been there as the ideas have developed and that sort of thing. So communication is critical.
Mm-hmm. Peter, to reinforce one of the things that ASP, new things that Association for Strategic Planning is coming up with is adding the domain of engagement to the strategic planning process, because traditionally that has not been part of it. There's been strategy formulation, strategy transformation, or basically planning what you're going to do, the execution and governance, which is definitely in what MTL does. But the whole concept, people are realizing finally that without engaging the team together and actually engaging the whole organization to extend out that approach, it's not going to happen. And so this is really, I love, Rodney, and I'm going to use the example that you give of how you engage your team in it, because you basically respected what their limitations were. And by doing that, they really got interested. And then I think you will be successful in bringing them, because those conversations that happen in the MTL discussions, after everybody has seen how you use the tool, are just really powerful. And each time you have a different initiative, you're applying it differently. And so people who are not really, quote unquote, into process, look at each time you go through it differently, because you're focusing on a different initiative. And yet you're honing the skills of being able to use the process to really attack what you want to do.
When we were moving from a functional organization to a customer-oriented organization at CompuSearch, it was, I would call, a massive transformation in how the organization was thinking about what it was doing. The way we accomplished the getting everybody on to get what we're trying to do and see what they needed to do it was to have an all-hands meeting with breakout groups where we asked people, why do we need to do this? Why do we need to do this? What do we need to do this? And what do you need to do? Or what are you willing to do? What can you do to help it happen? And what are we missing? So you have to ask, you have to engage the entire organization, and you would be in a sharing mode, but also an asking mode. So what are we missing? What are we forgetting? What have we gotten wrong? What do we need to do to make sure this goes right? Does it make sense for it to go right? And again, it's a process, not a point.
Interesting. So shifting gears a little bit, we've been talking about communication and leadership. I thought we'd shift over to sales. So looking for input on how people are using MTL to enable and grow through sales.
So I can speak to that because I'm in an engagement where we actually provided MTL for a multinational firm. Again, my name's John Cochran. Real quick background, was with PricewaterhouseCoopers in 2000. I ran their federal business development program. When IBM bought the consulting side of PwC, I ran public sector sales for IBM, and then was recruited by KPMG and did the same for them for federal. And then 2009, first private equity firm was Lake Capital. Worked with them on a turnaround. Second one was Harrison Street. Again, same in a sales role, turnaround within the federal government. And the last one was the Jordan Company. And in 2016, I found they could either afford to hire me or a CEO, but not both. And when we got the revenue to a point, and it just so happened in these three cases, the founding CEOs couldn't manage the business. So I had to go out and help them find a CEO. So in 16, I said, I can come in as a consultant, as an interim VP of sales business development, a fractional VP of sales business development. I can do consulting engagements, look at sales enablement. And so over the last 5 years, my company, MEC5 Consulting, has done very well at that. Recently, and I've known Peter for over 25 years, but recently, as I said, we engaged with a multinational firm. The multinational firm has a presence in the Washington, D.C. area, and they're focused on growing their federal government business. The parent company, which is out of the United States, has a geospatial product that I feel has quite a few compelling uses in today's environment. We're really looking at the product can do mapping, it can do predictive catastrophes, those kinds of things. So with looking at climate change, the forest fires, floods, we can get real-time or near real-time data to those first responders or people that are managing those critical situations. And it really hasn't been pushed through the federal organization. The individual I'm working with, very strong leader, went through MTL with all the leaders of the multinational organization. And once we finished that 30-day session, they requested that I stay on and get involved in the implementation piece of that. And so I am fractional, helping the US subsidiary execute what we came to conclusion with in MTL. So MTL can very easily be used with sales because I'm stating the obvious, a business cannot grow unless it grows its revenue, and it grows its revenue by sales. So you can have the best practices in the industry and you can implement those, but if you can't grow revenue through sales, then what's the focus? So
let me editorialize here. Michael just jumped in. He's the one that you were doing that with. I don't know if Michael, you want to say what your experience with MTL and WWW help you with sales that John's talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Peter. Here at CompuSalt Systems, we actually went through one of the MTL courses, one of the first or second cohorts we went through as a team, the US subsidiary, we went through that. That was very beneficial for us as an organization and company. But where we lacked at the end of it was our parent company that actually has this really amazing software. They weren't involved in it. So following that, that's when not too long ago, we actually went with Peter and the IntelliVen group to assist us with the WWW to get us all aligned onto the one page. Because previously we're aligned one area based off of the WWW. They are aligned in another area. And we were trying to meet, but we were never actually meeting and learning, getting more additional information from them. So when we all got together and went through this exercise, it was extremely beneficial due to the fact that I've been here for 6 years and I learned more about them in 3 months working with IntelliVen and hosting and coordinating, collaborating with our parent company. We learned more in the 90 days than we previously had in 6 months. And then following that,
in 6 years.
Yes.
Yeah, you're saying more in 90 days than you did in 6 years.
Absolutely, much more in 90 days. And that's where we met John through that as well. And getting John in with his background and with the support of the IntelliVen community as a whole, we're definitely making progress, significant steps forward that we have never been able to make in the past with our parent company, coordinating efforts, coordinating marketing strategies together versus us doing one thing and them doing a different approach up north.
Interesting. And is there, I'm just curious, you mentioned the WWW. Can you share with us an example of when there was, one of those moments where there was an aha?
Oh, absolutely. So for us being down here, we primarily support our parent company's software. So we don't do software development. We don't change it, modify it. We're just the engineers, integrators, test of the software once it's down here on the customer system, where they do all the development of it. So a lot of their WWW is focused just on, the development of their software, and ours is focusing not even on the software, but on our system administrator skills from IT professional services. So during one of the second meetings when we're truly talking about it, it's like, hey, we all work on this software. We just need to come up with a solid, hey, how do we work on this together? Which we do, but when you talk to everyone individually, they're developers, we're integrators, we don't work together. But on the back end, no, we work hand in hand with each other on it.
Interesting. It sounds like your who would be completely different if you thought you were servicing two different points along a continuum.
Absolutely. And our who's were very broad. They weren't pinpointed. That's one thing where IntelliVen really helped us narrow down our who, due to the fact that previously it's, US government. well, who in the US government? Not what agency, but okay, what level of a person in that agency? Is it the building management team? Is it the IT team? Is it the CIO? Really narrowing it down to a specific target within each agency as well.
Interesting. So it's a really good example about how the WWW is not only critical for the CEO, for example, to create a kind of a consistent message that can be communicated throughout the organization, but also as a tool for even a team that's geographically dispersed to come together. It becomes the communication template for that group to become aligned. And that's actually also, I suspect that, you know, as there are questions that come along in the future, you can consistently come back to that document and say, okay, does this align with our original idea, or have we evolved? So it's a way to check the organization and maintain alignment over time.
Absolutely, I would agree. And one thing I emphasize on, you know, throughout the past year with pandemic and everything, everyone working in different locations, you know, for us, you know, good thing for us, you know, we've constantly been in the office, but our parent company is outside of the US. So everything we've always done with them was virtual. So this right here, just throughout this past year, I think this would be a great exercise for these companies that are now more virtual to truly get everybody on the same page with one document that clearly states the WWW.
That's a good point. And
interesting.
I would like to share something that the WWW, after flushing it out and getting clear about it, you know, separately in the organization, we did try to align the WWW with our marketing brochure, our marketing write-up that we give to clients. So at first it's, okay, let's just take a look at both of them and see if they line up. And we saw things we wanted to change. Oh, let's tweak a couple of things. Let's tweak a couple of more things. Let's tweak a couple of more things until you end up throwing out your old company brochures and starting from infancy again with your marketing write-ups. And so the WWW led over a series of months to us ditching our old marketing brochures and write-ups, and in favor of writing a new one that's aligned with the WWW.
That's a good point, Rodney. So as part of the, you know, sort of multi-step process, you know, feeding into even the first work session, our current marketing materials, and, you know, it's as well as your culture and your mission and all of that, and you start to grapple with it. I think it's the process, it's the tools that make this doable. Even, and I think what you're saying, Michael, is it even actually enhances the online experience, enhances the connectedness between diverse locations, people in different places, because it works. And it's pretty, actually, you think about it, it's pretty amazing.
Peter, if I could weigh in for a second, having facilitated these exercises with sales and marketing teams in particular, and the rest of the organization, what is sort of magical about how the WWW forces the sales position and that whole market position to be clarified is because it forces everyone in the organization to be thinking about things from the customer's point of view. If it's facilitated correctly and you're pushing everybody to kind of get out of their box and put themselves into the customer's shoes and think about what it is really being sold to them, why they want to buy it, especially, those things naturally cause the sales align with what the sales organization typically is facing as they're carrying your solution out to the market. And so, you know, even though I think there are 6 tools in the MTL system that focus specifically on sales and improving sales operations, surprisingly, it's the WWW that I've seen have just a massive impact for improving sales, because it forces the rest of the organization to start putting on that sales hat and thinking like the customer.
Good point. So Peter, do we, I'm just looking at time. We had one other question. Should we move to that one?
Yeah, go ahead. Did you,
okay. Any other thoughts around MTL and sales? I think we've had some really interesting insights here about how MTL infects the entire organization.
Right.
In a good way.
I'm trying to get to the list of questions.
So the third question was how people are using MTL to help with strategy alignment and implementation in complex organizations. So we've talked about leadership, we've talked about sales, and now the question is specifically around strategy alignment and implementation. And I think, you know, in complex organizations kind of infers that, you know, that there are either a lot of different departments or, you know, it's geographically, you know, it's an international organization or geographically dispersed, but, you know, it's not kind of a, let's bring 4 people around the table and have a conversation.
Wes, do you remember anything from Touchstone days? Because I know what Rob Prater was doing with Department of Homeland Security ended up being pretty massive. You're on mute, Wes.
I'm not quite sure, but I keep on wondering if, are you actually aligning around sales, aligning the organization around sales?
Say that again, Wes. Are
you actually aligning the organization around sales?
You're asking if we do that or if MTL does that?
Or, yes.
Well, I think I don't know, I let Adam and John weigh in on that because they're the guys that do the marketing, messaging, and the sales. But I think what I think they're saying is you need the entire organization to know what it is selling to whom and why they're buying it. And then everything that gets done in the organization is helping that happen. So in a sense, yes. Is that what you say?
From a sales standpoint and being in the implementation phase, the what and who were very important. So the software product needed to be described in a way that our target clients could understand and feel that they could utilize. And then we went to target agencies. So one of our target agencies is the Forest Service. And we looked at who in the Forest Service has this burning platform around, pardon the pun, fire management and fire control. And how does that software product enable him to better manage that situation? So we very clearly have gone in with messaging that is focused on the decision maker, what their need is, and how it's tied to our software platform. So that's
Adam, would you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, sure. So to the point that this is aligning, I would say, an organization around a sale, not necessarily sales, the function or the department, but meaning, you know, how do you sell something that you're going to make? Now, part of the issue there is that you might be talking about something that's 2 or 3 years down the road. So if you ask your sales organization today, who wants to buy this? Why do they want to buy it? They may not have an answer. And again, it's part of the whole, I work a lot with startups, especially early stage startups that are still in ideation and the very early stages of bringing new products to market. And if you go out and talk to a customer today, they may not be able to articulate exactly what it is they're looking for that they want. That's part of your strategic planning process. It's part of your product management process to get there. But the point is that you are indeed orienting everything around a sale, or the idea that every effort in every department in the organization is geared toward making something or supporting something that will sell. That's the idea.
Back to the question of complex organizations, and has any of this been used to implement strategy and get alignment in complex? I would assume they also mean large organizations. Anybody want to speak to that? I'll say that the largest telecommunications companies, financial institutions, government agencies, we have all across the folks that we've worked with have all used this same approach in those organizations and to do massively complex multi-year initiatives to implement change. So yes is the answer. Does anybody else want to have an example that they want to share in particular? Joyce or Jim, I think Jim might have dropped off, but.
I was thinking about an example with a government, semi-government organization where just having consistent documentation or templatization of the strategy was part of the battle. So each one of the subject matter, the organization was siloed along subject matter expertise, and each of those was really run like separate businesses. They shared a budgeting process, but a lot of their strategy, the way they communicated it, and how they implemented it was independently created by each one of those areas. And so just having everybody at the top line be able to articulate their strategy with the same format, using the same guidelines, and ultimately using the same language helped them come together. They now had a common language to speak, and then we could roll out some of the actual implementation. We could roll it out consistently across the organization. So just the initial mapping was took care of a lot of the noise that occurred in their communication.
All right.
Peter, not exactly an example, but with the Association for Strategic Planning, their original mantra was think, plan, act, which has now been translated into formulate. Transform is kind of like a fancy way of saying plan how you're gonna transform, and execute. And the two other pillars that they added, as I mentioned before, one was engagement, because nothing happens, we realize now, it's not top down. But the other one that they added, I think, based on some of the people who were the thought leaders there attending the sessions you did for ASP, was added governance. And one of the things that I think have been alluded to indirectly here, but are really important, is the governance function that you go through with MTL, which is setting up those board meetings, setting up these systems, that is pretty much underrated or treated as a process by people versus seeing it as very powerful systems.
That's a really good point. John, I know you're a big proponent of that, and saying that going through the program, coming up with ideas is one thing, but then executing them and having management pay attention, stay connected to what's going on, and provide guidance is what makes it work.
Right. Yeah. And this is next week. There's going to be a board meeting and a strategy session, and Michael, who just spoke earlier, and myself will be part of that strategy session. And Michael, I don't know if you've had the chance to do that before with them, but really focused on growing the U.S. entity and bringing that software product to market.
Right. It pays, the truth that we build that around, those actions around, is it pays to pay attention.
Right.
All right. Well, with that, Denise, we could maybe ask one more time if there's any other topics that people want to raise, or we can go to the wrap up. Anybody want to say something at the end of the
Anything? Any other burning questions that they would like to bring to this group?
Topics?
Do you specifically have a piece in there about review?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's in the do and review process, which is an action driven by the truth that it pays to pay attention. It's all about how to keep the front line and the top of the house connected in a systematic, orderly way. But it's actually fairly simple, but it's what makes all the difference. And we do have a whole chapter, a whole section, a whole module in the program about that, a set of tools that go with it. If you look at the toolbox, you'll notice a lot of the tools have been, as I said, sort of modernized and upgraded and fleshed out and reconnected to each other. But there is one now on sort of the template for an executive review that you might want to look at, Wes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Peter, if you don't mind, just to follow up on that, one thing for the review session that is extremely helpful, is following the cohort, following the WWW, we have gone through now, we work closely with John, we do reviews and actions every single week. That is what's keeping the momentum going as well. So, it's not just a quarterly review of how everything's going to keep the momentum. We do it weekly with John and our parent company in Canada. And that's just keeping that momentum going.
There's sort of like levels to it. So you have the sort of an initiative that you are underway with that you're constantly reviewing at one level. Then you have the board level review, which is more like quarterly.
Yep.
All right.
Right.
Thank you, everybody. I just let's step back and just reflect on this experience, and not any particular issue or topic, but just what do you reflect on this session, how it works, does it work? Any comments on it? Any suggestions?
The way that you designed it, I wasn't really involved in this one, in the design of it, works really well. I like the questions like that Denise facilitated. I like having the speaker because new things, I think Rodney, what you said was everything that I knew, but you said it in such a unique way. I really enjoyed hearing it from the customer's perspective, exactly what we were talking about. And so I think it comes across very powerfully there. And I was relearning things, even though I helped teach this course. So it's very powerful. What might help, Peter, it's hitting me right now, is maybe, I don't know how, when we were making an assumption that everybody here knows all the MTL, I guess we did a little bit of a review, but maybe something a little bit more on, since you've worked so hard with the tools that are related to which part, maybe that's for next ILC, that gets one level down from just having, talking about MTL.
Yeah, I don't know what you think about that. I mean, I think it might be like Adam said, we shouldn't have written one book, we should have written 12, because each one is really a book and a whole lot of content. So by going through that ebook with just the WWW, right, we sort of try to parcel it down. Maybe we could have done a little tutorial on it as an intro here, but even just the WWW, what is it, a 40-page book, Adam?
Let me say, what I'm saying though is if this is an intelligent learning community, so we're assuming many people here have been through it, but to the extent that there are people who have not been through it, there's a level of understanding that I don't think they're going to get. So I'm just thinking about if there was something that said that gave it.
Think about that.
It depends who's doing it. So
I'm probably the newest person in this group here. So as far as me, I got a lot of understanding from this presentation.
You were able to extract understanding?
Yes. I was able to extract a lot of what I was looking for.
Right. Well, thank you, Wes. I don't know, Joyce and others here, and I have heard many past participants, many people we've talked to can say that they're constantly going to the toolbox, they're constantly drawing on what they learned in the program, just like you've heard from a few of us here. And what we really try to do with the ILC as a forum, as a platform, is create an opportunity for them to share that with others in person. That's a hard thing to have happen. So I don't know how to make that happen any better virtually or asynchronously or something. I find it a little bit frustrating because I know there's so much goodness going on out there, and I want to bring it together in a way that others can see and experience and share with each other. I think we've only gotten so far in making that happen. I think, I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that, but that's
one thing this has done is really driven me to want to go look back at the tools.
Say that again. What's driving you to want to?
One thing this has led to be is made me want to go back and review the tools.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people come back and on and over and over and over again to the 1 or 2 or 3 tools they're most familiar with. There's 60 of them out there, and they're all good. So that's another thing. It's like, what else is out here that I could be using? And somebody asked earlier, like it's like knowing which tool to use in which situation takes an incredible amount of experience. And that's really what we want to be, like the place to come back to say, here's what I'm working on. Do you have anything? That's what else they got in that hard drive that we can bring into this picture to make it easier or easy to set up the framework, give us the template that we can run and actually focus on what we're trying to do rather than inventing on how we're going to do it.
It's known as cueing theory in supervisory training, which is how do you teach the supervisors the cues for when to use which tools they have. And here you have 60 tools, but people have to have an understanding of how to get to them. And that's what the program basically does.
Exactly.
But that's a lot of content.
Well, here's a big question. Should we do another one of these? And what, if anything, should be different about it? And Joyce mentioned the idea of possibly a little tutorial. Any other ideas? Should we do another one of these?
Peter, I'm thinking that based on what Joyce was saying and what we were talking about earlier, that perhaps doing a workshop about the WWW, for example, and lessons learned and updates, refresh on how to use it. Maybe a
better way to go.
Yeah.
So, Denise, we were talking about possibly doing one on the change framework.
Actually, Peter, I have an idea. Maybe I loved what you said about use. I wrote down using MTL for strategy alignment in complex organizations. We have a January opening of ASP for a session, and I wouldn't have you come back and do Mtl Immersion, which we've done several times, but that question would be really an interesting one if we could get some people to talk about it, think about it, have the examples, and pose that, because about that time is when ASP is also going to be rolling out these new 5 pillars, which has to do with the engagement and has to do with the governance. And I think that there's a lot in MTL, I think, especially with the governance aspect of complex organizations. So rather than leading with the WWW, which we've done for 3 years, to lead with something else.
That's an idea. I think that might be doable.
I'll have to go to the board, but
think about it. The person who asked that question is Lori Levitt, and she was not able to attend the session, but will view the recording. And I'll be speaking with her later today, and maybe I'll bring that up as possibility that she might even want to participate and take a lead role in that, Joyce.
Oh, that would be very exciting if you could go do it.
I think also Peggy could be interesting because of the experience with FIMA in the DHS type of experience that in NOAA and some of the large, you have experience in health or hospitals. There could be some big cases that could draw some pretty interesting attention.
Yeah, because what we like to do for that is if we have a consultant that is telling how you do it, we first like to hear from the CEO or the person the dog
benefited from it.
Yeah, they first say, these are the results, this is what we got, whatever. And that tees up, how did you do that? And then the consultant comes in.
Right.
That would be a good way to do that too. Great, I'll be in touch.
Okay. All right, well, I think that takes us to the end of our prepared remarks. Do you all have the links that we've sent out over the course of the program, but we'll also be sending out a PDF of the slides we went through here today, which have hot links to the content that we've mentioned. And you can always connect with us by subscribing to IntelliVen.com to get on our mailing list, and follow us on LinkedIn to see our content promotions, questions and answers that come with sort of the idea of an online community that is doing what we're doing here, only online, asynchronously between sessions. And we'll look maybe perhaps at putting together a workshop version of this some number of months forward to change up the experience a little bit. Oh, speaking of Lori, with that, let me stop the recording, but introduce Lori here. Hold on.